let's talk about exigent circumstances. I don't know. Better yet, let's talk about what you should do or what rights you have if the police knock on your RV and demand to come in. First of all, let's do some ground rules. This is not legal advice. This is just entertainment. I am a board certified trial lawyer and I am licensed in a couple states, but I'm not your lawyer. And nothing on this video constitutes legal advice for you. But let's get to it. Every now and then we hear of a situation where police come to the RV and they knock on the RV and they demand to go inside. A lot of people will have questions. What are my rights? What can I say? What should I do in this circumstance? And this is really tricky. This is so tricky that it's gone all the way to the Supreme Court before. And this is basically how it breaks down from a federal constitutional perspective. Now keep in mind, states can have different rules and protections as long as those protections don't violate, or rules don't violate the Constitution. So you get the best of whichever protection you have. If the state provides you more protection, that's great. But if the state provides you less protection, that doesn't work. They have to give you the constitutional minimum. So with that framework and understanding, every state is a little different. We'll talk about, generally speaking, framework, what protections you have when the police knock on your RV and say, I want in. Now before you say, I'll never have the police knock on my RV, I'm a law-abiding, good camping citizen, and you may be. That's not what requires to have this situation. There could be someone in the campground call the police on someone else and they go to the wrong camper. Happens all the time. There could be a unreasonable suspicion that someone in the campground is doing something illegal, so they decide they're just going to search everybody. These things happen. While most law enforcement officers are good, hardworking to serve and protect, there are some bad apples, so you need to know your rights. Love coffee in the morning. All right, the first thing you need to understand is most people would say, no warrant, you can't come into the RV. I know all about this. I took civics class back in college. You have to have a warrant to search my home. And if this was your home and absent exigent circumstances, like they hear somebody screaming in there, or there's fire, or there's reason to believe that there's intimate harm or danger if they don't enter, you're right, they need a warrant to search your home. Unfortunately, RVs fall in this murky category more like an automobile most of the time. And police can search your automobile with less requirements than your home. They can need a warrant to search your automobile, but if they have what is considered probable cause, that you have something illegal, or like they smell marijuana, or they see something on the seat, or something of that nature, they can go ahead and search your vehicle, especially in the area where you can reach or grab things. And there's a whole book of case law. We could talk for hours on this. One thing just to remember is the police don't need as much reason to go into your automobile and search it as they do your house without a warrant. There's these exceptions, these probable cause exceptions for automobiles. And a lot of times police will use that to search your RV. Well, this went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, look, we know you got a bed in there and a refrigerator in there, but it's mobile like a car. And that's part of the reason we have these probable cause exceptions for vehicles, because it could just drive away. The danger could leave, the threat, the legality could leave. And that's the same with an RV. So we're going to treat it like an automobile. But if it's clear that it is either hooked up, mobile, or mobile at the time, especially if you have a motorhome, you start it and drive off, or if it's hooked up to your trailer, or it would be easily or quickly put into motion. So what does that mean? Well, what that means is the more permanent you have your camper, the less likely they're going to be able to use the automobile type of exception for probable cause, and will absolutely need a warrant. Now, this gets murky because there's not a lot of definition in the law right now. Does that mean if it's hooked up to full hookups, is that too much of a hurdle to unhook and drive off? Maybe. What if it's up on blocks? Well, now definitely probably need a warrant. What if you're at a seasonal site and you've got it pulled up and kind of tied in with a permanent deck? In this case, I would say definitely going to need a warrant like you would for your home. But the truth is there's variances between here, and the courts would have to look at each of those factors and weigh them, whether or not this was a situation where you were mobile or not. Now let's go back to your automobile. They can't just search everything and everywhere all the time, and they have to have real probable cause. They have to be able to articulate it. So even in the automobile exception, there are limitations. They have to be able to substantiate the probable cause. It has to be reasonable, and the search has to be reasonable to that probable cause. Now, that's why police will always ask you, can I search your car? Because if you give consent, all bets are off. You consent to the search. They don't need a warrant. They don't need anything. They can look all day long, and you can't go challenge the probable cause in court. You'll always hear a cop ask, can I look in your trunk? Right? Because they know they'll probably be required to have a warrant to look in that trunk, except if they can jump over some hurdles. So the first thing I would always tell anyone is we have a right to privacy. It doesn't mean you've done anything wrong. If an officer asks you if he can search your premises, they're not doing that because you're your friend. And some officers are looking for something. It might even stretch what that something is to get that arrest. So my perspective, always deny the search. No thank you. You do not have permission to search. Now, this is really important in the RV context, because later on we may be fighting, was this a home that required a warrant, or did he just need probable cause like an automobile? But if they ask for consent, just deny it. Also, do remember you have a right to remain silent. Insist that they have a warrant. Even if you're not sure if a warrant's required or probable cause not, say, do you have a warrant? Can I see your warrant? Without a warrant, I'm not giving consent for you to search my RV. We're going to search anyway. We don't need a warrant. What is your probable cause? Those are the questions you should be asking. They may not answer you, but you're making a record of, did they actually have probable cause? So a lot of times the police will give a probable cause at the time they search. Then they'll realize that there was no basis for that probable cause, so they'll think of a secondary one based upon what they find inside the camper. And that's not how it's supposed to work. So ask them, articulate, what is your probable cause? Now, in no way should you ever obstruct the police officers. Do not fight with them, do not do any of that. Fighting with law enforcement is done in the court, not at the campground. That will end you a one-way ticket to jail, and probably, even if you can beat the search and all that, you're probably going to end up with some charges that stick based upon your behavior at that time. Be nice, be courteous. You do need to ask a few questions. You should ask immediately, if they ask to search your camper, do you have a warrant? Can I see the warrant? If they say, we don't need a warrant, you should say, I believe you do need a warrant. But what is your probable cause? If they can't articulate a probable cause, they may turn around and leave. They may not. But you've asked the questions. And if they articulate a probable cause, and then that turns out not to be a sufficient probable cause later on, and it's determined that your RV should be treated as an automobile, you've helped build a defense that you can use in court to assert. While you should stay firm that you don't consent and don't answer any questions, that right to remain silent is actually very important. You don't have any obligation to do that. You can ask them for the warrant, you can ask for probable cause, but if they ask you a bunch of questions, go, I'm not going to answer any questions. Am I under arrest? Am I being detained? Just be polite, be courteous, but don't give up your rights. So in short, really the gist of this is if the police come knocking on your RV, just know you may not have all the rights you do at your home, but you may, and you want to make sure you preserve those. So ask for the warrant. If they say they don't need a warrant, don't agree with that, don't consent, and do ask them to articulate what is their probable cause if they're entering anyway, but don't interfere. That's really what you have to remember. It's unfortunate because a lot of us travel full-time or a lot of the time. This is our abode, this is our home, and we think of it as our home, but the law doesn't always treat it the same, and it's important for you to know that as an RVer. Now let's sit back and enjoy the day.